The first speaker will be B.Raman, the internal and external aspects.
Thank you. I would like to thank the organizers of this get-together for having shown me the courtesy and the privilege of being here in your midst today. It is said that the Americans usually start their presentation with a joke, and the Asians usually start their presentation with an apology. I would start my presentation, even though I'm an Asian, I would start my presentation today with a correction and then with a confession. The correction is that I was introduced as a former cabinet secretary to the Prime Minister of India. I wasn't. I was a former additional secretary in the cabinet secretariat of the Government of India. The post of cabinet secretary is totally different. The confession is, I'm standing before a well-informed and highly distinguished audience, and when talking to a well-informed and distinguished audience, there is always the risk of carrying coal to Newcastle. There's a risk which has to be faced, but I will try to face that risk as well as I can. What I'm going to do is, initially, I'm going to give a brief assessment of the ground situation in J&K, as I see today, as it was before September 11, and as it has been after September 11. We all know that the situation which we have been facing in Jammu and Kashmir, it started in 1989. Before that, there had been isolated incidents of terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. Example, the hijacking of an aircraft in 1971, and the kidnapping and murder of an Indian diplomat in the United Kingdom in 1983. But those were isolated incidents. Since 1989, we have been having a sustained campaign of terrorism against the Government of India. And this campaign has passed through two phases. The first phase was between 1989 and 1993. During this phase, most of what happened on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir was due to indigenous Kashmiri groups. There were various groups. Some were advocating greater autonomy, some were advocating independence for Jammu and Kashmir, and a few were advocating merger of Jammu and Kashmir with Pakistan. This situation has changed since 1994. Since 1994, the role of the indigenous Kashmiri organizations in this terrorism has gradually declined. It's not that they have given up their objectives. They continue to stick to their objectives. But a large number of the Kashmiri organizations have realized that resort to terrorism is not the way of dealing with their objective. Since 1994, there has been only one indigenous Kashmiri organization which continues to resort to what we consider as terrorism for achieving its objective, and that is the Hizbul Mujahideen, the militant wing of the Jamaat-e-Islami of J&K. All other organizations which have been in the forefront of the terrorist violence in Jammu and K are not Kashmiri organizations, but Pakistani organizations. For example, the Harkatul Mujahideen, HUM, which was previously known as the Harkatul Ansar, the Lashkar-e-Toiba, LET, the Jaish-e-Muhammad, the Harkatul Jihad al-Islami, al-Bada, etc. If one has a look at the last report of the Counterterrorism Division of the US State Department submitted to the US Congress on April 30, it describes all these organizations as largely Pakistani organizations based in Pakistan. The leader of Jaish-e-Muhammad, Maulana Masood Azhar, about whom we have been hearing so much in connection with the abduction and assassination of Daniel Pearl, is a Pakistani Punjabi from a town called Bawalpur in Pakistan, Punjab. Professor Hafiz Mohammad Saeed, the leader of the Lashkar-e-Toiba, is a Punjabi Gujjar from Pakistani Punjab. Qari Saifullah Akhtar, the leader of the Harkatul Jihad al-Islami, again a Punjabi. So all these organizations are Pakistani organizations. And we can see when the movement started in 1989, between 1989 and 1993, for every 8 Kashmiris who were killed in clashes with the security forces, there was one Pakistani. Today, there are more Pakistanis who are being killed by the security forces than indigenous Kashmiris. Between 1989 and 1993, only 130 Pakistani, Afghan, and other foreign mercenaries were killed in J&K. Between 1994 and 2000, this number went up to 2,037. It is estimated there are another about 2,000 plus Pakistanis and Afghans who are operating in Jammu and Kashmir. This is an important aspect of the situation one has to keep in mind. All these organizations, which have been described by the State Department itself in its report to the US Congress as largely Pakistani organizations, they share certain common characteristics. The first is these are pan-Islamic organizations fighting for a pan-Islamic objective. They no longer look at the situation from a purely Kashmiri perspective, but they look at the situation from a pan-Islamic objective. They describe their overall aim as the liberation, within quotation, of the Muslims in the whole of India. They describe Kashmir as their gateway to India. So they say once they establish, achieve their objective in Kashmir, then they will turn their attention to the rest of India. It is in pursuance of this objective that they have been developing a capability in the rest of India also for similar actions. Number two, all these organizations look upon Western-style democracy, Westminster-style democracy, as anti-Islam, because according to them, under Islam, sovereignty vests in God, whereas Western-style democracy, under Western-style democracy, it is said that sovereignty vests in the people, which they think is against their religion. They project the functioning of democracy in India as having a corrupting influence on the minds of the Pakistani people, and particularly on the minds of the Pakistani elite, and hence the attack on the Indian Parliament on December 13. And three, since 1998, all of them have been associated with Osama bin Laden's International Islamic Front for Jihad against the US and Israel. The State Department's report to the Congress submitted on April 30 of last year says that Harakatul Mujahideen is a member of bin Laden's International Islamic Front, and that's leader Fazlur Rahman Khalil was one of the first signatories of the first fatwa issued by bin Laden against the United States, calling for attacks against the United States. The State Department report also describes the Jaish-e-Mohammed as suspected to be receiving financial assistance from bin Laden's Al-Qaeda. It does not say anything about the links between the Lashkar-e-Toiba and Osama bin Laden's International Islamic Front, but our own assessment in India is it is also a member of bin Laden's International Islamic Front. And all their cadres have been trained by the Arab instructors of bin Laden's Brigade number 055 in training camps which were previously functioning from Afghan territory. The other thing which I have to mention is, before May 1999, there was not a single instance of suicide terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. There were a number of incidents, but not a single instance of suicide terrorism. Suicide terrorism came to Kashmir under the inspiration of bin Laden and under the inspiration of Al-Qaeda. Between May 1999 and the end of 2000, there have been 43 incidents of suicide terrorism, including not only in Kashmir, but also outside Kashmir, including the attack on the Indian Parliament on December 13. Out of these 43 acts of suicide terrorism, 41 were committed by Pakistani organizations and only 2 by indigenous Kashmiri organizations. The result of all these activities, I'll just give 1 or 2 statistics. For more than 400,000 Hindus from Kashmir, they have been driven out of Kashmir. Many of them still remain in refugee camps. Not only that, 40,000 Muslims from Jammu and Kashmir, people having business interests, trading interests, have been forced to leave Kashmir, and they have been living in other parts of India. If you come to my hometown of Chennai, you will find at least about 20 Muslim families, trading families from Jammu and Kashmir who have shifted there in order to safeguard their business interests. The third aspect which I would like to mention is, between 1989 and 2000, 10,338 innocent civilians were killed by terrorist violence in Kashmir. Out of these 10,338 innocent civilians, 8,645 were Muslims. Muslims who were killed by these people who had come from Pakistan. They killed them